Hi, this is Bridget with Life on Spectrum, and today's episode is about bus. And now I'm not talking about a school bus, I'm talking about the public transportation or busing. In your area, it depends if you have public transportation or not, but generally speaking, in some areas, there's some kind of busing or transportation available. If you live in a more of a rural area, you'd have to call your local Department of Transportation and they could tell you what is available. First and foremost, because your son or daughter has autism, they are eligible for special transportation. Those are generally like the smaller buses that you'll see, and generally they're white, and sometimes elderly ride them. So be aware that if you do get that transportation for your son or daughter, they will be traveling with some of the elderly in the area, but they are eligible for some of that transportation. I would also like to say that even though you may be more comfortable with those smaller bus transportation, they usually like to know 2 or 3 days ahead of time if they need transportation. So it's nothing that you can call at this last minute or a spur of the moment, or even if they have to go to a doctor. So if possible, you should have it live in an area where other public transportation is available. Now, my story of public transportation started in high school. I always assumed that my son would actually want to drive, but I soon found out at 15 and a half that that was not going to be the case. He loved go-karts, he loved riding the lawnmower, but driving behind a car was a different story. And I will tell you that the reason he didn't like to do it is because of his literal thinking. Bus transportation became vital because of that literal thinking. He needed somebody else to drive him, even though he knew that it was going to take him an extended period of time to get where he was going. Now you might be asking or thinking, how did we start this transition of him riding the bus alone? Well, first, when he was about 15, 16, like I said, I would make excuses of why we couldn't drive into the city. And a lot of times it was because my car was in the shop, or I had a flat tire, or something along that line, or maybe a friend was meeting us in the city and they were going to give us a ride back, whatever the case may be. A lot of times I would do it on a day that there was an event going on, so he would be excited to go. And for instance, he loved going to the farmer's market. And so on Saturday morning, every once in a while, we would ride the bus into the city. The reason that's important is just to get them comfortable with riding public transportation. Public transportation can be a strange place. Sometimes there's different smells. Sometimes there's people that want to talk. Sometimes there's not. So we always made rules when we went on the bus. You don't talk to someone unless they talk to you first. And also you can sit by yourself, but just be aware that somebody may sit next to you if the bus is crowded. Those are the things that you have to keep going over with them. I think I probably rode with him about 5 different times before I allowed him to ride the first time by himself. The first time he rode by himself, it was actually a very short distance. It was just to the grocery store about 3 miles down the road, but I did it on purpose because it was a shorter distance. What I did is I actually left and I said, Brian, you're gonna have to take the bus. I have to go because I have to pick up a cake or something. I can't even remember. He's like, okay, Mom, I'll meet you there. And I actually just drove a half a block down and watched him get on the bus. And then I sped ahead and met him at the grocery store. But start small. And then now, believe it or not, it's second nature for my son to take the bus, and he can actually go all over the place. The other thing I want to stress to you about busing is make sure they know how to read the schedule. Sometimes the schedule can be the most complicated. Make sure they understand the difference between inbound and outbound and where you live. Make sure they memorize the route number that they live on. And most bus drivers are very good and very nice to talk to your son or daughter. And if they start riding a bus more frequently, have them introduce themselves so they are aware of who you are and who your son or daughter is. Hopefully those are little helpful tidbits about riding public bus transportation, and we'll see you next time. And this is Bridget with Life on Spectrum. Thanks for watching that episode, and make sure you come back and join us again for upcoming videos. They'll be uploaded almost on a daily basis. Also, if you really enjoyed us, like us below, or even leave a comment for us to respond back to. And if for all of you that are really involved in the Life on Spectrum, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate you. We hope that this is worthwhile for you, and we'll see you next time on Life on Spectrum.